Good morning. Welcome to our October Board of Mayor and Alderman work session. I'm going to ask Alderman Bryant to give the opening prayer, and then we'll get into our agenda.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day to come back and do this business. Thank you, God, for giving us the health to come back. Pray, God, you be with our community. Pray, Lord, you be with our complete community, Lord, that you would take care of us and look over us. God, we just thank you for being able to live in such a great place. Thank you for all your blessings that bestowed upon us on a daily basis that a lot of times we don't even think about them. God, we just pray that as whatever we do and say here will be in your will and for the benefit of the people of the city of Fayetteville and of Lincoln County as a whole. Lord, we just thank you for this food, the beverage has been provided this morning. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We'll look at a review of the 9/3/20 work session minutes. Anybody have any corrections, additions, deletions? Not, we'll enter those into record. We'll go into our department reports. Public Works, Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Mayor. Short and sweet. We survived last week, no trash pickup. Hopefully by quitting time tomorrow, we'll be back caught up. Everybody be back on regular schedule. Brookmead, we're waiting on water department to get through, to get finished up out there. We're done with the bridge work. We're just waiting on paving. 2nd Avenue, I'm not really sure. I didn't get out there yesterday or the day before, but waiting on the deck to be poured and hopefully get that opened up here for too much longer.
I think they're going to pour that deck, if I'm not mistaken, maybe today.
Are they?
I think they might be.
Mr. Collins was out there yesterday.
It was poured yesterday.
It was poured yesterday?
Okay. I knew it was real close.
So it'll be getting close on that one.
So does that mean that all of 2nd Avenue is going to be closed in that section until that all gets good and dried out?
It'll remain just like it is until we're complete.
Okay.
Could be a 28-day cure period.
Could be,
Could be a
yes.
28-day cure period because poured and poured.
Okay.
So they're getting there, though. They're getting there.
That's pretty well all I have unless there's any questions.
Anybody else have anything, Mr. Plunkett?
You might update us a little bit on Laurel Drive. I had a lady speak to me in Gerald's yesterday, and she lives on Laurel Drive. She wants to get her driveway paved, but that's not going to happen. Because Tony's not going to drive a truck across that. So update us a little bit on that situation.
The engineering work is being done at this time. I talked with the engineer last week. He's got another project he's finishing up, and then when he's finished with that one, he's going to jump full bore on this one. Survey work has been done, so it's just all in his hands right now.
Yeah, and two, the folks that lives on that drive, I mean, that's a dead end. There's no way to do a bypass.
It'll be done in 2 sections.
2 sections. There'll be
One lane will remain open at all times.
It won't be a situation where the concrete's got to cure, though, because the concrete's already been cured, or it's put in there. So it should go quicker, right? Or
No, sir. It'll be just like the other two.
be the same as others?
Yes, sir.
It'll take a cure time?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Unless the engineer it's up to him. I'd rather have a bridge as a culvert put in
So
there.
it's gonna, we've had enough of these tiles, metal tiles. So that means one side would have to cure, then the other side cure.
Yes, sir. It'll be probably twice as long process
It'll be a
out
little
there.
bit longer process.
Plus he's going to widen it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wide now, it looks like, but he's going to widen it for traffic to
Yeah.
get through there when we're doing one side at a time.
I tell you, no more houses than what's in that section. It wouldn't hurt to go out there and go to each house and leave some type of a letter or something.
We'll probably have a community meeting like we did on Brookmead.
Yeah.
Have them all, invite them
Explain
all
to
up here.
Why it's taking so long and why it's going to take longer because of the way it's designed.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Plunkett. We'll go to the police department. Police chief is out today. Scott, are you handling this, or is?
Yes, sir. We just have 3 actionable items for the board's consideration.
So number 1, you have Bella Snowball 5K for 11/14/2020.
Yes, sir. Permit's been submitted, ready for board's approval.
Okay. So okay, we carry that on to Tuesday night?
Yeah.
Okay. Number Number 2, Lincoln County Toy Drive roadblock, December 5th, 2020. This is an annual event, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir, and they have submitted the permit. It has been approved to move forward by the Police and Fire Committee.
It's okay, we take this Tuesday. All right. Number 3, City of Fayetteville Trunk or Treat, 10/29/20.
Also an annual event, and this one will be at Stonebridge Park on Thursday, October 29th.
Okay, we take that forward? Okay. Anything else to report from the police department?
Not at this time, sir.
All right. We'll go to fire department, City of Fayetteville Fire Department SOP. We have Mr. Grubbs from MTAS.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, Fire Department SOPs. I guess the first thing, the first question I have for you all is who adopts the SOPs? Is this does the body act on the adoption, or is that adopted simply at the department level?
In the past, it's been at the department level.
Okay, that's the way it should be. Good, okay. Let's see here. I noticed a few things since the personnel policy has been updated recently. I noticed a few items, and I don't know if that's been shared with you all yet. Have you seen the marked up items, or is that just Scott and John?
We were still doing some within the last couple of days, and we had committee meeting the other day, but
Okay. Yeah, there were a few items in there that need to be addressed, to clarify, to simplify, that appear maybe to be in conflict with the personnel policy, or possibly just not necessary in this document. Did you want to go through those today?
that'd be fine.
Okay. All right. I think it's on page 5. In the paragraph, it says, "At no time shall this document supersede the Fayetteville City Charter, the City Code, personnel rules and regulations, or any other recognized work in ordinance form, if those just mentioned are more stringent." I would just get rid of "if those just mentioned are more stringent," for one thing, because they always supersede. You do not want to create an idea that you have to weigh the two against one another. Just simply get rid of that language. I would, on page 6, recommend getting rid of in the first sentence the word "adopted," because that infers adoption by the council. Just clarify that it's published by the fire chief and the city administrator on approval. And the next paragraph, the last sentence, "Therefore, any member that choose to violate these guidelines and best practices shall be made the subject of disciplinary actions against those responsible for such violations." And then I've stricken "unless otherwise a variance has been approved through the chain of command." You don't want the chain of command feeling like they can just bypass the disciplinary process and provide whatever variance they may or may not feel is appropriate. It needs to have human resources involved, the department head involved. So I've recommended striking that. The next, let's see here, I'm trying to go through the next highlighted text. The Code of Ethics, I would change the title of Code of Ethics, because you have a Code of Ethics. The city has an adopted ethics ordinance, which is the city's Code of Ethics. I would change the title to something more appropriate to indicate that this is not the city's Code of Ethics, but it's the fire department's honor code or something like that. I don't know, that's nitpicky. I would eliminate probationary period on page 13, because now there is no probationary period. with transition from due process to at will. Under section 18, or page 18, the tattoos and body art, I would recommend revisiting that in conversation with Human Resources just to make sure that the language is up to date. There's some concerning language in there. Any intentional body modification, mutilation, or intentional scarring that is excessive or eccentric. How do we define that? And how do we make sure that someone who has body art, that's part of their, I'll give you an example. What if you have somebody come to work here who is a Pacific Islander and has a facial tattoo and it's part of their religion? You can't just automatically exclude that individual without a conversation. So you need to contemplate those situations a little more clearly, and we can help with that. And under the same thing, fingernails, toenails under the appearance, same situation. Let's look at what makes sense. What's job-related, consistent with business necessity. To not have colored nails does not prohibit someone from fighting a fire. It doesn't get in the way of fighting a fire. We want to discuss what the appearance standard is and not just assume that it's still a valid way of doing business in public safety. On page 36, it addresses FLSA exempt employees and FLSA non-exempt employees. I want to take the examples out of that. It says example, fire chief, assistant chief, captain under FLSA exempt. They may or may not be, based on their duties, exempt. You don't make that assumption of exemption under the FLSA just based on job title. You have to look at the actual duties. So I would recommend taking the examples out of there to allay any potential confusion. A few spelling corrections. Under wage augment on page 37, the example that's given includes the calculation of the $800 supplement, and the way that is applied has changed effective January of 2020. That 29 cents an hour wouldn't be applied to any hour worked for overtime throughout the year. It would be just during the training period weeks. So A, since the rules can change, and B, examples like this, mathematical examples, sometimes create more confusion than clarity. I would recommend taking that out. And if there's a question about the application of the wage augment to the regular rate of pay, that can be handled through payroll or through human resources. Let's see. And page 38, when it talks about compensation, this place in the pay range specifies the individual's employee's pay approved for 212 work hours within a 28-day work period. Do you pay salary or hourly rate for firefighters? Hourly. I would just get rid of that. There's no need if they're just paid hourly. The less said, the better, really, especially when it comes to things that might point to a personnel policy, because you don't want those two to even appear to be in conflict. So if it's addressed in the personnel policy, just say, see the personnel policy, rather than trying to repeat it in a fashion or another. Call-out hours. That would need to be the language. Make sure that the language matches what was adopted in the personnel policy before you publish this. That's all I recommend on that. Given some, I copied and pasted it in the side notes in this document, the language from the personnel policy, but just make sure that it matches that. Okay, page 57. Background checks. It says for authorized members to conduct a background check on potential employees or volunteers. And then it also goes on to say searches should be conducted by Human Resources or with permission from the fire chief. It's not best practice from an HR standpoint. That needs to be cleaned up and indicate that background checks are to occur only with the endorsement of Human Resources, because they're going to know the Consumer Protection Acts, what you can do and when you can do it in the cycle of a background check. You do not want to do background checks earlier than the law permits and in a fashion that the law does not provide for. And that brings me up to background checks B on page 57. The department has an obligation to include internet-based content when conducting background investigations of job candidates. Only do that through Human Resources, only do that with the disclosure, and only have one person designated in your organization that's trained to do those types of background checks, because here's the risk. If you've got an untrained individual in a department given permission to look on social media as part of a background check, there are things on there that you cannot unsee, and that person is not trained to not recognize certain things that might indicate membership in a protected class, or religion, race, affiliations with certain things. So you really want to be careful with that. So we need to get with, when this is reconstructed, we need to have a hand in making sure that it's done appropriately to protect the city. There's no need on page 65 of including the types of discipline and the practices according to discipline, because that's outlined in the personnel policy. If you create a circumstance where it's in conflict with the personnel policy is always going to prevail. So in order to alleviate any potential confusion or grievances that come from confusion, I would recommend not having that in the personnel or in the SOP. Especially when it comes to suspensions and such. That dismissal, demotion, all that needs to live in the personnel policy. So on 66, that needs to go away. And even in the personnel policy, I did notice there was someone could be dismissed for failure to pay or make reasonable provision for the future payment of just debts. Yeah, that's archaic. We want to eliminate that for sure. Well, actually, eliminate this whole portion as it relates to dismissal, because that's handled in the personnel policy again. But just wanted to clarify that on the first garnishment, you can take no action. If someone has subsequent garnishments, then you may be able to take action unless it's for child support or court-ordered payments. But to simply say the failure to pay or to make reasonable provision for the future payment of just debts is 1950s. Page 139, it is under the segment Member Rules and Best Practices. Number 10 deals with during the period of illness or disability the member, their attending physician, or a member of the family shall telephone or otherwise advise the shift supervisor every shift that the employee's scheduled work is. No, do not do that. That runs afoul of the FMLA and the ADA. Only a trained person should be handling FMLA protected health information in between the department and that individual's physician, and that needs to be Human Resources. So that would need to come out.
That's on 139.
139, Section 10, or Item 10.
Okay. On 139 is different, okay.
And on 141, the question was brought up on Section 30. members shall not participate in any unauthorized possession or threatening use of weapons, to include but not limited to ammunition, explosives, fireworks, or knives on city property. What this should be reworded to be more simply said is members shall not participate in any unauthorized possession or threatening use of weapons. Period. There are authorized possessions and unauthorized possessions. They're established, A, by law and by personnel policy. And then by written directive of the public safety director, Richard would give written directive on who can carry a gun and whose job, which positions it would be pursuant to their duties. Other than that, the personnel policy indicates that no one can carry unless you're doing so as part of your job. Police officers, for example. So simply say, members shall not participate in any unauthorized possession or threatening use of weapons. Can't use weapons of any kind to threaten. Can't possess any weapon that's unauthorized, either by law or by policy. Next is on page 241. Of course, it's the sign-in sheet. Get rid of the initial for probationary period because there is not one any longer. Those are the cursory initial things that I looked at. I think, John, did you have a couple more that you had questions or?
The public information guidelines, page 71, 72. The last paragraph on page 72.
It's 200 and something pages. 72, you say? Okay. Yeah, to include social networking sites, City of Fayetteville Fire Department, go ahead and highlight that. Realize that each member has a constitutional right of free speech, and we do not want to infringe upon the right in any way. If a member chooses to exercise their right of free speech while on duty and or representing the Fayetteville City Department, the member will be in violation of this best practice. Let's get rid of that and say C, the personnel policy, because it clearly delineates what is and what is not First Amendment protected speech as an employee in the personnel policy. And rather than just copy it and paste it in the same language, just refer to the personnel policy. If you copy and paste the same language, personnel policy changes, and then this doesn't change, you got conflicting language.
On page 133, which is part of the section that deals with contacting elected officials and appointed officials, the paragraph right above the harassment is my title.
133. Alrighty. And I'm working off of a PDF here, so. All right, 133. Which paragraph?
The paragraph right above where it says harassment. And
Okay. It's important for all city employees to understand that meeting directly with an appointed official to discuss job-related issues without that person being your direct supervisor, yeah, that needs to go away. That's completely eliminate that. Would be my recommendation. And simply say, close this, and simply refer to the personnel policy as far as contacting public officials, because that's protected under the Tennessee Public Employees Political Freedom Act. So.
is that all you had? I think he covered everything else that I had.
So really, the simple thing to do would be to get, when Richard's around, and John's available, and Steve Cross, and myself, maybe Zoom or meet in person at some point and just go through this and make some corrections. And maybe educate Richard, since he's new to fire service in a way, on a couple of nuances.
Anybody else have anything?
I would just like to say I appreciate you really looking into this, and also you, John, because when I started going through it, it was just overwhelming. It just,
It's quite a few pages in
and
it.
I've got this bad habit of trying to read everything. It's hard to read everything in that.
I hear you. Well, and again, it's good that
I
you're
appreciate it.
it's good that you're going through it, but remember, it's not something that the council has to act on, but to be aware of is very important.
I have a few concerns here. I am on the Fire and Police Committee.
Okay.
When this was brought to us, my statement was, why are we rushing this? Let's wait for our new fire chief. We've got a police chief trying to write fire chief or fire department SOPs. This is the third copy of this that we have received. These are the errors that I found.
Okay.
And I brought it to the committee. And I'm like, we got problems here. One being, firemen can't talk to elected officials.
Yeah, that's going to go away.
Yes. One was, they were told they could not carry a gun in their vehicle.
In their work vehicle or their personal vehicle?
Personal vehicle.
Oh, yeah, you can carry a gun. You can park your personal vehicle in a parking lot under TCA 39, 17, 13, 13, I think it is. 39, 59, 13, 30. Anyway, the gun's in trunks. You can have one in your car locked up, and that's fine.
But they were told this, and then in here it referred to that, but a different wording. So then, I didn't want to bring it out of committee because it was too many problems here that I saw. It was forced out of committee.
If you don't mind me interrupting, why was it in committee?
Well, at that time, the police chief brought it to committee for the board's approval.
Okay, maybe he was under the impression that the board had to approve this document.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe so.
Because the last fire chief had brought one
Okay,
and was trying to get it passed. It was a
And brought
lot
several.
larger than this one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then it's up to the fire chief to, your code says the fire chief will establish rules and regulations. And the city administrator oversees the fire chief, in this case, public safety director. So really, it shouldn't even be brought to committee. It should be at that level, get MTS involved and making sure it's cleaned up, everything is good to go. And then it's basically what it is, it's a rule book on how to do the job. To some degree, it's a work instruction. So if it says in the SOP that you use a 3-inch hose to fight fire, and then the state law changes and says you got to use a 4-inch hose to fight fire, they're on the fire scene, they're already in conflict with something that's adopted. They need to be able to change the work instructions as it happens. So.
And that's why I think the fire chief needs to write this or oversee this. And then it was sent to all the aldermen to vote on, and we had all these errors. So I think we need to really step back, slow down, and when we're doing these manuals, involve HR. You know, but it was just strictly coming through the alderman, and I thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention more closely. But we were told, Steve Cross wrote this is the gospel.
Yes.
No.
Steve Cross wrote it, and it's pretty generalized, standard, acceptable stuff that has to be tailored specifically to your organization. So, and Steve wrote that before the change to the personnel policy.
Right, exactly. Not his fault.
Right.
But, you know, this is being pushed for us to vote on it, and it's not ready for us to vote on it.
Let me back you up just a second. You shouldn't even vote on it.
True.
So really, if you want to review it and make suggestions, that's great. And honestly, if any of the elected officials want to make some comments and suggestions and ask questions, that's great. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the department head, who right now is Richard, until a fire chief is put in place, and the city administrator for approving the work instructions, the standard operating procedures and guidelines. And when Richard, he's in Gatlinburg this week, right? This weekend. I'll be down there tomorrow, so I'll see if I run into him on the strip, I'll bring this up.
Yeah.
But, really what we need to do is just schedule a time for me and Richard and Scott and John and Steve Cross to sit down and talk through, okay, what about this? Is this how you do it? Okay, good. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. And I did speak with Richard on the clarification of guns and trunks versus carrying on duty. We've got that clarified.
Okay, and, and like I told him, bringing it to us, I could pick out misspelled words or wrong words or things like that, but when you get to the scene, I don't know if it needs to be a 4-inch pipe
Right.
or I don't have a clue. I'll admit, I don't have a clue about firefighting, and that's why I think it's important that the fire chief be involved. I asked Mr. Collins, and he alluded to the fact that we should have a fire chief by January.
Okay.
By the time we get together, who the powers to be review this is probably going to be that time. Let's leave it to the fire chief.
And that's up to you all. The only dog I have in this hunt is to make sure that
And I appreciate that.
you're informed as to what may conflict with your personnel policy. And if you choose to wait until January to get this done, or if you choose to work on it very quickly, either way, we'll be there to help. If you choose to wait, make sure you put a memo out saying, please ignore these things. These have questions, or these are potentially in conflict with the personnel policy. Just letting you all know to refer to the personnel policy when it comes to this policy, this document, this section. Just do that in the interim.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a great day.
Mr. Collins, you have anything else under fire department?
No, sir, not this time.
All right, we'll go to Parks and Rec, Mr. Collins.
Mayor and Alderman, I'd like to report we've got numerous activities coming up in the coming months. And in light of the governor's most recent executive order issued on September 29th, it's lightened limitations and restrictions quite a bit. However, it encourages to still follow social distancing and other cautions with the COVID issue, and all department activities are following the guidelines. We have a haunted house coming up the end of October. Scarecrow Trail is already up at Stonebridge Park and being added to. It's very nice. The dog park agility obstacles have been received. They've shipped, and we've got them at Public Works, and we're scheduling a time to make the improvements to the dog park through the Boyd Foundation grant. LPRF for the soccer complex. The second revision has been submitted to Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, TDEC, and there's 2 comments that the engineers have to address, so they'll be submitting the third revision for plan approval probably by this week. Also, the maintenance staff with the Parks and Rec has reviewed Kids Park and William Battle Park and conducted inspections, and arrangements are being made to reopen the parks. We did a survey, and it's about 50-50. Lewisburg, Pulaski, Winchester, several of our communities, half of them are opening, half of them are remaining closed. But the committee, we discussed it, and we're going to start the process of reopening. And that's all I have at this time, Mayor. There'll be more details coming forth.
Anybody else have anything in regards to Parks and Rec?
I do. I want to clarify that no one on my committee, Tanya and I know Alderman Hartman and Ms. Small were at the committee meeting, that no one mentioned anything about closing down Don Davison. Nobody mentioned anything about closing the Storybook Trail. It was asked that work be stopped and that it come forward to the committee first before more work continued, therefore liability purposes and information purposes, because there's a lot going on down there that me and Alderman Allen are unaware of. And I think that a lot of things have been going on down there that nobody on this board knew about. And I need, I want to let everyone know that the rumor out there that everything's closing is not closing. We have no intentions to close anything. And that's,
Yes, everything that's been completed out there, which the trails is included in that, it's the same today as it was last week. They're open, they're there for everybody to enjoy.
I got an email this morning from Coach Davis, and he's cross-country track coach. And he is the person that said that he put up the caution tape on the trails because they were having a run. It had nothing to do with the city. I'm not on the Parks and Recs committee. I do go to the committee meetings, so I can know what's going on out there, and I was just blown away about what's going on that I did not know anything about. Not that I'm against it, but it didn't come through the city to my knowledge. So I think there needs to be discussion of this board. I think it needs to be a lot of clarification where we're going in the future. Maybe in Parks and Recs. Where are we going with this park? Is it going to be more of a nature park? Is it going to be a combination? I thought it was a sports complex. So I think this is a topic that we need to have some long discussions on, decide where we're going from here.
Yeah, I think that's what happened Monday night. We're going to open up communication and get more details, and that way we can inform not just the committee, but the board.
And to your point about Coach Davis, who's out in the audience, he did also mention that there is going to be another run next week. So if you see yellow tape next week, it doesn't mean anything. It's just for that temporary time. So, all right. Anybody else? Okay. We'll go forward to planning and codes. Ms. Hyde.
Thank you. All I have to report today from our department, because Christy will do a full report on Tuesday night from our department. We have a lot going on right now, of course, with branding. There are a lot of steps being taken for the fall branding campaign, which is planning to be all done before Host of Christmas Past with media. They're working on website, which I think Jerry's going to discuss more in detail, and some disposable type maps. There's a lot of things that are happening. We recently did all the photo and video in the last couple of weeks, so they have a lot of great pictures and videos around the city and to market and getting people in our direction. So there's a lot going on right now with branding. Also, just from my side, we have gotten a bid in and for the tree trimming, and so the trees will be trimmed around the square, and those will be done after work hours and on Sundays between now and Host of Christmas Past. So everything should look really nice around the square. That's our goal, is to get the beds underneath cleaned up, the trees trimmed back really good for fall, and move forward with hoping to do that on a yearly basis, so we don't have to make such drastic changes every 3 or 4 years.
Anybody else have any questions?
I do have one thing I noticed here, 18 permits issued, and that's in September, I guess,
Yes, sir.
for over $4 million. So was that a big project somewhere? That's $4 million. It's pretty good size.
We have a spec building going
That's
in
what
the...
part of that is?
Yes, sir.
Spec building?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But we do have a lot going on with permitting and planning and everything right now. Lots of projects coming through.
Since you brought up the spec building also, the spec building has been, as I understand, if I'm wrong about this, Alderman Oliver can correct me because he's an expert on industrial things, but the industrial board typically asks the city and county to do some upfront funding on spec buildings. They didn't ask for anything this time. They're doing that on their own.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great too. I mean, of course, we're here to help if something did happen, but they've got the funds now from the sale of other buildings to be able to do their own thing, which we appreciate. And I just thank IDB for getting out in front of other counties, having us a spec building for somebody to come into when it's time. So yeah, they're on top of it. The spec building is underway now. They've got the grading done out there and ready to start. Utilities and all that going in and the building going up. But yes, they're doing all that funding themselves.
Yeah.
All the other spec buildings are full, are with tenants at the moment.
Yeah, all of them's full up. And I do know that since I've been on the board, and we have the two, I believe, have been built out there. We had done some funding up front. The city had as long as the county. And I didn't want to bring that out. And we did not do anything up front on this one. So that means the industrial board's doing well financially.
Yes, sir. Any
Anybody
other
else have
questions?
anything, Ms. Hyde? Thank you.
Thank you.
IT, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. Y'all have my report. If you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer that on that. Just to cover one or two things that Lennis had mentioned. I am working with Revise. We had a kickoff meeting on a new website. Steve Challen was involved in that, and we both gave inputs on the way we feel like the new site should look. And the first view of that website will be coming up in the next week. And they're looking at going live on it by January the 1st, but there will be steps that the ECD team and I can show them maybe what our new website looks like, and we can make changes as we move forward. So we're looking forward to that for going live.
Do you have a date, a tentative date on it?
We're looking at January the 1st, by January the 1st.
Okay. And who's hosting or providing on this one?
Revised.
Okay.
Same company we've been using. It's just that we're gonna bring in the tourism part of it. That's gonna be coming off the same website.
Okay. Gotcha.
One other thing, my network drawings are up to date now. Inventory is up to date. And the only other thing that I really needed to cover, and if you got any other questions, I'll be glad to answer it. I think that next week I've contacted the company that monitors our fire alarm system, so I'm going to do one test throughout the whole building on Wednesday. I'm looking at maybe Wednesday where we'll test the whole building just to make sure we're ready for any kind of a accident or anything that would happen. So
How's the Wi-Fi on the square?
it's doing great. We installed a few more signs yesterday around the square. I'm waiting for a little bit more hardware to install the remaining ones, but now as we walk around the square, you'll see them about every 2 light posts. You'll see them.
We're getting a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, it's been great.
Anybody have any questions, Mr. Taylor, this morning?
There was some discussion in one of our committee meetings, been to 2 or 3 lately, but anyway, it was brought up. I think it's probably a good idea to proceed with. We didn't get rid of the depth, but it was brought up to take a look at securing the building a lot better than what it is, security-wise. I don't know, I think they've talked to you about that.
I
I think
agree
there's some
with that.
good ideas there for us to look at and to begin working kind of down the road in order to do that, because it's the world we live in.
Yeah, and like I've had one quote for building a wall, kind of the outside, and as you come through the main door, right as we come through the office area, and after Stacy, to make sure that whole area is secured through there, and then what would it cost to put in door locks and card readers.
Right.
So it would be a pretty expensive project, but of course, our department could do all the networking part of it, so
Well, it could be very expensive, but on the other hand,
I say expensive.
safety.
Yeah, I agree
Safety for the employees,
100%.
Safety for the public. And I think it's whoever came up with this thought, I think it's a good thing to continue looking at.
Yeah,
But I think it kind of what and I think the mayor really made some really good points on this. It was in finance. To be sure if we do that, to have some actual security experts to come and help us that knows what they're doing. So we do it right, you know.
yeah.
And do an overall plan rather than just a little isolated plan. So
For the whole building, I agree.
I appreciate the fact that, you know, employees who ever begin to think about the idea, because I think it's important.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Okay.
We'll go to finance. We have two items, both related to the city school system, budget amendments, just standard, moving around some line items for their audit purposes. If it's okay with the board, we'll move that to Tuesday night. Go ahead with the other report.
Really, all I've got, our FY20 audit is in full swing. We've got 2 auditors in-house pretty much every day right now. The other 2 are working at the city school system. They have to complete the school system audit because ultimately it becomes part of our audit. When they finish up there, they'll join the rest of the team down here. We upgraded our payroll software, and so everybody's very happy with those changes. September 20 local option sales tax came in at just over $240,000, so that's looking real good. And yesterday I submitted our first request for funding, or our only, hopefully, with the T and CARES Act, which is some of the COVID relief. So hopefully we'll be getting approved for that soon. And that money, it's $255,000.
So you mentioned the other day in finance that September local option sales tax is the highest we've ever had on record for September.
Yes, sir, it is. I've got that. Looks like the highest prior to that is $208,000. And then this month we were at $240,000.
Go on back further on that list, and way on back several years ago, and tell us what it was.
If you go back to 2012, it's $135,000.
So we gone from 135,000 to 240
Oh, excuse me, I was off a month. It was $140,000 to $240,000.
in that period of time.
In 8 years, we've gone up $100,000.
We certainly appreciate our merchants
Yes, sir.
and everybody that's selling products and all to do that for us.
And as I did mention in finance, if you look at it on a percentage of the year, we're currently 3 or 4% more than our budgeted amount. For where we should be at this point of the year, we're $63,000 over budget on that.
Of course, going back that far, I do have to make one little statement. I don't want to be misleading. A pretty good chunk of that was that we relooked at our sales tax a few years ago and did something different that brought in a more sales tax, but we won't go into that. We'll just.
That looks like in about 2015 is when that happened, and in 2015 it was $203,000.
Right. You know, the board made a move that brought in about $600,000 a year. It didn't cost our taxpayers anything. So we're proud of our community that has allowed us to really kind of survive through this thing we've been going through lately.
Anybody have a question, Ms. Roselle?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Since about 2015 to now, we've been kind of steady from 203, 209.
It's 203, 189, 207, 207, 208, 208, 240.
So we're about on line. Okay.
So we've had a good jump this year. And these would be, for what we received in September, would have been sales that were made actually in July.
Right, and people have to remember that all the restaurants aren't still fully open. I mean, a lot of them are still drive-through, some 2 or 3 have closed down, so.
Because the sales are made in July, tallied in August, then we receive our portion in September.
Right, that's right. Do you have any more things?
Yeah, I did. I want to go back to the school.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to do anything. I just want to mention it. One of these, it looks like it's kind of tracking these amendments is what's been going on with the sales tax. Because one of these, they're making revisions because of the increase in revenue items above. And one of that was local option sales tax at over $28,000 with the school system. and then investment income about 4,000. So that's kind of tracking with them instead of not just us, the school system also. And then another one was that looks like the other one was they got a grant for $15,000 that increased their revenue, and they used that for touchless water fountains at Fayetteville High School, which is a safety issue. So that's what those two amendments is about.
All right, thank you so much. We'll go to administration, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. We had some impressive milestones yesterday with two public works projects, one being the final utility certification has been, no conflict statement has been received on the William D. Jones. That was submitted yesterday afternoon to Region 3 TDOT. In follow-up phone conversations, he's going to submit that ASAP to the Nashville for approval. The plans for William D. Jones are approved. We just need this utility certification to be signed off, and that should happen in the coming days.
And to clarify, that's not the local Fayetteville utility. That was for the state. They needed something from the water utility in the county, and they needed something from the, was it charter?
Yes, sir. TDOT, if a company has a presence in Lincoln County, not just Fayetteville, but in Lincoln County, we must get a no conflict statement. And efforts have been ongoing for several months. One of the companies, well, when I made the phone call myself earlier in the week, I talked to a lady in Minnesota. And so I worked through that to find out where locally we could talk to somebody, and found out the address of their local headquarters located in Huntsville. And we got the document signed yesterday.
Come on, Dorothy.
Yeah.
This has been a challenge on everybody. It's no fault on anybody. I'm just saying it's been a challenge.
And then, as Director Plunkett mentioned, 2nd Avenue, the deck was poured yesterday. They still have to do some work on the sides and then the entrance, and then of course some paving around the bridge area, but it's moving forward quickly. And the last thing I'd like to touch on, Mayor, Alderman, October 16th, Friday, October 16th, 11 a.m. will be the dedication and unveiling of the Tennessee Volunteer Statue at Camp Blount. We're really looking forward to this. So many people have been working throughout the years to make this happen. And we'll put together a really good ceremony with all the help of the volunteers and office staff. So please make every effort to attend this special moment. That's all I have at this time, Mayor.
Anybody have any other questions, Mr. Collins? Okay. Any other aldermen have any other thing they want to bring up today?
I do. I would like this lady right back here at this sign to turn the sign around toward the camera. Get both sides. The camera's done got both sides already.
Camera's behind. There you go.
Two-sided. So both sides has got on the camera already, but she sat there and held that sign up the whole time through the meeting. So.
One other note I have to mention is that there's a post out on the door outside that the Fayetteville City School Board has moved their meeting to October 13th at 5 p.m., I believe at the library at the City High School. So, having said, Ms. Harmon?
When will FPU be back to televise the work sessions? I've gotten several calls that people want to watch the work session, but...
Well, now the last couple months it has been televised on Channel 6,
The work session.
yeah, what Mr. Taylor, and that's those who've seen it, it's a good clean copy of what we're making. There's just from the COVID, there's just been some hesitancy on how Mr. Dye lets Mr. Counts go out and record some stuff, but I will touch base with Mr. Dye and see when he'll be back to officially record the work session. But what Mr. Taylor will do today is he'll get it and he'll get a copy over and he'll contact Mr. Counts and we'll get it up and going, and as early as tonight it may be running, or tomorrow night.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, we're adjourned until Tuesday. Thank you so much.
Hey, Stacy, I've got time to say.
He's actually not here.